Hello everybody and welcome to The Point, your weekly stop for all things sports. Straight out of Pittsburgh in the 412. My name is Riley Taylor and I'm your host. Here at The Point, we're going to give you a weekly show debuting on Mondays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, covering all things sports from every league in and out of the Pittsburgh area. Also, make sure to follow our Instagram and Twitter at thepoint_412 because throughout the week you can get our exclusive hot takes as we tackle the immediate breaking news right as it happens in sports. Also, of course, make sure to subscribe here on our YouTube channel at thepoint412, as this is where our main episodes will always debut week after week. Just to reiterate, those episodes will debut every Monday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, as we get more comfortable with production, we plan to add an additional episode on Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time as well, so stay tuned for those. And now, here's the lineup for our inaugural episode. As all of you have probably heard, sports are finally starting to make a return back into our lives in the wake of COVID-19. Commissioners, league officials, team owners, and players of all major sports leagues have been drafting plans, working together, and voting to get sports back up and running for our enjoyment. So today, we're going to dive into 3 different leagues and give you our take on what they are doing right and wrong, and how we expect certain teams to finish, especially our teams from the 412. We're going to talk about the NHL and the return to play, and our thoughts on how that is going, the NBA and their return to play in the 22-team tournament, and the MLB outlook and when they will finally start playing. To kick off our inaugural episode, we're diving right into the league that got itself together quite rapidly, and that is the NHL. Now, what we know of what the NHL has put together is a 24-team playoff bracket of 12 teams in each conference. And the top 4 teams in each conference will play a mini-series for first-round seeding, while the remaining 8 in each conference will play best-of-5 series to try and put themselves in stone for the official Stanley Cup playoffs. Now, the first and second round series lengths are still to be determined, but as always, the conference finals and the Stanley Cup finals will be the best-of-7 series that we know and love. And as for right now, 2 hub cities out of 10 will be chosen to host a playoff format, one for the West and one for the East. And Pittsburgh is actually one of the cities on the list, but I find it very unlikely for Pittsburgh to be even chosen for this, given how COVID-19 impacted Allegheny County in the Pittsburgh area. Now, this is all been put together, but there are many teams on the outside looking in, as there always is, despite the readjustment and surplus of more teams in the playoffs this year. And one of which is, as we usually see, the Buffalo Sabres. And young captain Jack Eichel was very quick to share his ongoing frustrations with the Sabres and their management, given 5 years into the league, he hasn't even come close to touching playoff ice. And, I mean, don't get me wrong, the Sabres have put together a decent roster of guys like Kyle Okposo, Jeff Skinner, Marcus Johansson, and drafting Rasmus Dahlin, but it's the frustrations are still adding up, and Eichel said, quote, "I'm fed up with losing and I'm frustrated. It's been a tough past couple of months and a tough past couple of years. If guys are okay with the fact that we're not winning, that we're not putting ourselves in the postseason, season after season, that's where you get to find an issue." So now, of course, the future is still much up in the air for any rebuilding NHL team, but given that Eichel signed an 8-year extension that carries to the 2025-2026 season, I give him, right here, I give him at most 2 seasons to see a significant improvement before tensions begin to fly, a trade is asked for, and the entire Buffalo Sabres organization blows up. So I'm saying right here on The Point in our inaugural episode, if you are a Buffalo Sabres fan right now, I fear the future for your franchise, and I would be praying that Jack Eichel doesn't walk and your team improves, because you might have a dumpster fire stirring up very soon in Buffalo. So, but anyway, now moving into the other side of things in the upcoming 2020 Stanley Cup playoffs. Here on set with us, we have one of our primary specialists, Brett Marquardt, to help us take on a look of what we expect looking into this playoff. That could be one of the best playoffs we will see in the last decade, given that it's a new format. So now, for us being sourced out of Pittsburgh, we've always had our hockey hopes on the Pittsburgh Penguins throughout our lives, and they are set to take on a 5-game play-in series against the Montreal Canadiens coming up very soon, most likely in July. So despite Montreal being a team that has no business being in the playoffs, being even the 12th seed, Brett, do you see a healthy Pittsburgh Penguins roster running into any issues with this Montreal Canadiens team?
Only issue I see, RJ, is Carey Price.
Of course.
If Carey Price plays good, it is a factor.
Now, That is true, and as us being guys that follow the NHL pretty closely, we can't even really come to a lot of names on this Montreal Canadiens roster.
Montreal is not really that good, but the Pittsburgh Penguins, if they come out fast, the last 3 games they've played, I think, the Penguins won 2 and the Canadiens won 1.
Of their last 3 games.
Of the last 3 games before COVID hit, of course.
Yes.
But I think if they come out fast, strong, they should easily push through the Canadiens.
Of course, and when we talk about this roster, we think of Max Domi, Shea Weber, Carey Price. If you're just unless you really dive into the roster, there are plenty of depth players there. But I just find it very shocking that right now people are kind of putting the Penguins on, even though they're the favorite, they're really thinking that they're not going to do well in this series. And especially given the fact that we're going to see a healthy Jake Gensel return to the lineup, rested, and a playoff caliber Patrick Hornquist that we know that makes such an impact. I just see the odds are too heavy in the Penguins' favor.
Oh, yeah.
Unless we see someone like you said, Carey Price returning to his old playoff format, because without a doubt, Carey Price can outplay Matt Murray. Carey Price can outplay Tristan Jarry, but it's just all things can click. He's rested. He could be right on his game. So now another team that I wanted to dive into, with you, Brett, is the Edmonton Oilers. And obviously, as you know, and our fans should know, I've been a long fan of the Edmonton Oilers since I was about 11 years old. It was just a team that I picked up. And, this is 2 years in a row now that out of Edmonton, we're seeing 2 of the top players in the NHL with Draisaitl and McDavid, as anyone that watches hockey should know. And Edmonton is set to face off against a playoff Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Corey Crawford, and the whole Chicago Blackhawks. So knowing that the Oilers are a team that's up and down but have great, 2 of the best players in the NHL, how do you see them facing against a very experienced, a young Chicago Blackhawks team that has the players that can win a cup?
Well, they have to play safe. They have to play safe, RJ, because the Blackhawks, they can make some mistakes here and there, and Crawford will back them out.
Of course.
But Edmonton Oilers, they don't have that privilege. They don't really have that too good of a goalie.
It's up in the air between one or the other, Mike Smith or Mikko Koskinen, and they both played well, but they each, you don't have a starting goaltender that you go to. So, and I agree with you there with the experience that the Blackhawks have. It could be a factor, and as you should know, the Blackhawks won all 3 games against the Oilers during the regular season. So does that?
That doesn't really matter though, because it was COVID. Everyone was rested, ready to play.
So you see,
but I totally see the Blackhawks winning this series.
So you think that a healthy Blackhawks team will come in?
Yeah, I think they should win, but I could see Connor McDavid and Draisaitl cooking something up.
Of course,
and,
especially coming
figuring
back.
something out.
Now, with it being a 5-game series, there's very little, margin of error. You lose 2 games in a row, and you're on the ropes. Do you see this game going? This series, going 5 games, or do you see? Or do you see a team?
I see it going 5. I see it going 5s. Edmonton Oilers totally have the spirit in them to make it go 5. They got the young kids.
Of course,
and,
with a lot of talent.
McDavid's one of the best players in the world right now. So,
and if not the best, you can hear here right on the point. And now to wrap things up, out of the 24 teams set to face off in the tournament this July, who do you see as a favorite, as an underdog to win the Stanley Cup?
You know what? Now I think about it, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
You have to be kidding.
I'm telling you, RJ, they're young players. This COVID stretch, they've improved drastically. I'm telling you. I am telling you.
Austin Matthews is one of the top goal scorers in the league again, but
they have so many young depth players like Nylander, and they also have
Mitch Marner, and they even have John Tavares and Morgan Riley.
And John Tavares is totally teaching them so much, even though he's not too old, but he's kind of a veteran on the team.
But what happens if they win this play-in against Columbus and they run into the Boston Bruins, who they have lost to year after year after year?
Hey, you know what? They're a different team now than they were before COVID, I can tell you that.
Well, it'll definitely, and you hear it here on the point, folks. We have somebody saying that the Toronto Maple Leafs, they've never won.
I'm telling you,
60-something years since they've won this.
They have a chance. They have a chance.
Well, you hear it, here first. That the Toronto Maple Leafs are the underdog to win the Stanley Cup here on the point. So once again, Brett Marquardt, one of our specialists here with us. Thank you for being here, Brett.
Well, thank you, RJ. Thank you for having me.
Of course, and that is our take on what is going to happen in the NHL coming up. Now switching sides over to the NBA and their return to play format. So what we know right now is the NBA has finalized a 22-team tournament that is going to place out of Orlando, Florida, slated to roughly start in July and commence hopefully by mid to late October, so that the next regular season can obviously start. Now, prior to the beginning of the tournament, we will see a series of play-in seeding games for up to 16 days, giving each team 8 regular season games to receive a fair placement since the regular season ended so suddenly with COVID-19. Now, once the seeding in the playoffs conclude in the fall of this year, we can expect the 2020-2021 NBA season to pick up right around the beginning of December for that to happen. Now, here on set with us today, we have our NBA specialist, Nate McCary, to give us his takes in how we expect this tournament to go down and pan out. So we'd like to welcome Nate here with us, as I said, our NBA specialist. Now, Nate, obviously due to the wake of COVID-19, we are seeing something completely unique in the NBA right now and how our champion is going to be decided for this season. So all that being said, who do you really see as the winners in this playoff format? In other words, the teams that really have a chance to dominate right out of the gate.
Personally, I think it might be like the younger group of teams, like the Sixers. Sixers are really gonna, because they're so young, and like Embiid has been working on it, or at least he claims working on his health over the quarantine. So I think like the Sixers and those teams with like a young base are going to do really well. But then again, you can't count out teams like the Lakers, because like LeBron is still LeBron no matter what. Like he's been doing stuff in year 17 that we've never seen any player do in history. And then like, you know, can't count out the Clippers either. I just think like it's honestly up for grabs. It just depends on who treated themselves better over quarantine, who took care of themselves, who was eating right, who was, you know, still getting shots of every day, and who just overall,
yeah, that makes sense,
stayed healthy.
Now, on the exact flip side of that, who do you see as the losers, or the teams that could suffer from an untraditional playoff format?
I think the teams that could suffer from this could be the teams that were already fighting for a spot, so the lower seeds, and the teams that came into this season through a lot of trades, so the chemistry isn't there. You know, like I said, the Sixers, I just think, and the Sixers and the Celtics, like the two that they've been together for a while, and same with the Bucks. But then there's teams like, you know, the Clippers, they did all just start playing together this year. They've, like, their starting five is almost all brand new.
Yeah.
Same with the Lakers for the most part. You know, they added AD over the season, or over the off season rather. And I just think it comes down to team chemistry and who just, you know, gels better together.
So it needs to be asked then, who do you take as an underdog that could kind of shock the basketball world with a championship because of this rest that they were able to get and now coming into a shorter kind of adapted playoff format?
Okay. Personally, and I think I might be the only person that says this, but the Nuggets. Over the course of quarantine, Jokic, he has lost about 25 pounds, and that was his...
That's incredible over that span of time.
And the only downfall of him was his quote-unquote dad bod, or him, like that's what they called him. They called him like the dad because he was like pudgy and just he lost so much weight. They said he now has a six-pack. He's 6'10", and he lost 25 pounds over this quarantine. He was already a force to be reckoned with before he lost all this weight. He took care of himself way better than any center in the entire league. So I think he's going to dominate. And then they have Jamal Murray at shooting guard, and just a bunch of underrated players in that team. I think they gel really well together.
Well, there you right here, folks. Expect big things out of the Nuggets, potentially, here on The Point. Now, obviously, the basketball world would not be alive and well without shifting a major focus to talking about LeBron James and the Lakers. Do you see this as a year that LeBron comes back to glory, given how well Anthony Davis and himself were able to carry the team throughout the regular season?
Absolutely. I think, like I said in the beginning, you can't count LeBron James out. You know, it's just... like the stuff he does at year 17, it's quite ridiculous what we see him do. And like, I just think, first off, the quarantine kind of ruined his legacy. I think if he wins a championship this year, that's when the talk of him being better than Jordan is now gonna, I think, start to inch over towards LeBron, because Jordan wasn't doing this in year 17. No bias. I'm not gonna say who I think is better, but just I think the Lakers are still always going to be in, especially with AD being as powerful as he is, and just their role players like Alex Caruso. Nobody expected him to do what he's doing this year, averaging double digits. You just don't see that from a bench, especially a bench of a team that spends that much money on their starting five.
Now, surely anything can happen once these playoffs kick off, but no matter who wins, do you think an asterisk should be placed next to this season's championship?
Absolutely.
So, in those words, if LeBron grabs his fourth ring, Does that even though it's a fourth ring, is it kind of like, it was a quarantine kind of, it doesn't really compare?
Yeah, you can say that. You could like, it could go both ways, honestly, because you could say he's what is he, 36, just turned 36 in December. You can't, like, you could say like, like people his age would be affected in a poor way of a quarantine, because just like all the rest. And, he has a family to deal with too, you know what I mean? It's not like he's young and just only has to worry about himself. But, so you could say that, and then the other way, you could say like, oh, the other teams didn't have as much rest. And it just kind of goes along in the same categories when people say Jordan would have won 2 more rings if he didn't play baseball. It's just something that, you can't really prove. It's just a matter of opinion both ways.
Yeah. So then, do you expect players to be on the top of their game, given the downtime that we've had from COVID-19, or do you think it's going to take a few games or rounds even for most players to return to normal?
I think they're professional athletes, so muscle memory is going to be there, and I think as of right now, they're definitely getting shots up, because most of the states, besides a few given ones, are in the green phase, so they can, shoot around. And a lot of them have their own courts. LeBron was holding practices with 2 to 3 people at a time on the team. So, and I just think you can't, as a pro athlete, that might be a little like quote unquote rusty, but what is rusty for a pro athlete? They're still the best players in the entire world. They're still getting
those reps.
Yeah, they're still,
despite it.
Yeah.
So, well, as always, this is Nate McCary here, our NBA and basketball specialist, joining us here on the set. Thank you, Nate. And that is our take on what is going to happen with the NBA as we return to play. And now we can switch our focus to the ever so slowly developing MLB and their return to play during COVID-19. Now, unlike all the other major sports leagues, the MLB has been caught dead in its tracks about how to resume the 2020 season, how to start the 2020 MLB season and fight for a World Series champion. Now, although we have seen a few proposals come up like 114, 89, 82 game seasons, nothing has been accepted or really loved by owners, and quite frankly, I think this is ridiculous. How come baseball, of all sports, it's played outside too, which makes it easier, can't seem to follow the path of its neighboring sports partners and just find a way to play baseball and start your season? All these owners are picking and choosing and saying, I don't want this plan. The money just isn't there, and it's going to be too late, and a season won't even start. Like, listen, folks, we're in the middle of June, and July is quickly approaching. And if the MLB really wants to avoid a fallout and have a true substantial season, then they really need to get on the same page as these other sports leagues and just play baseball. Just find a way to do it. And personally, for me, I love the idea of an 81 to like an 89 game season and an expanded playoff format. Because if some sort of playoff expansion comes into effect, this could be a great opportunity for small market baseball teams to really have an incredible year and have some progress in a shortened season. So, shifting the focus now, here with us on set today is another one of our specialists, Isaiah Griffith, to help us sort through what we can expect out of baseball in the near future, post COVID-19 with the resume of play. So, Isaiah, obviously, all of us here at the Point coming from Pittsburgh, we've been accustomed to unfortunately low expectations for the Pittsburgh Pirates, given that they've had one of the lowest payrolls in all of baseball year after year after year. But we have seen many times that prior to the All-Star break, the Pirates put up some sort of fighting chance in the NL Central and make things interesting. So, given we are looking at a potential shortened season, do you see the Pittsburgh Pirates having an increased chance of making a run at a postseason berth?
I'd be lying if I said they would have a better chance. But given that these prorated salaries are, I think, 80% now, players probably won't have the motivation to play the game, especially when the last 9 years they've had 3 winning seasons.
Exactly.
So, that's tough.
And now, as anyone will know, the tunes in the Pirates regularly, there are many issues that need to be resolved on their roster, and pitching is always one. Mm-hmm. And as we were talking about even before we got on the show here, what happens between our pitchers that develop in the AAA and then they get to the major? Like, what's your take on that?
Well, yeah, their AAA programs, whatever they're doing down in AAA for these pitchers, it's something good to see, because pitchers coming out of AAA, man, they're crazy. Garrett Cole, probably the biggest one, and he's probably the best. He's the best pitcher in the league right now. So,
and as we were talking about Tyler Glasnow thrown down to Tampa Bay for almost, now we have Chris Archer, but not living up to the expectations that as fans, us here at the Point, we have gone to many games over the years, and I went to Chris Archer's debut. And it's a shame to see when we have so much hope after growing up into
Yeah, I mean, you get a career worst 5.1 ERA.
Yeah,
so that's terrible. That's not something you want.
So then, with all this being, something obviously needs to change, and we saw some changes with general managers and managers. So, do you agree with the change of setting with Clint Hurdle to Derek Shelton in the offseason?
I do. I know a lot of fans were wanting him to get out of here.
Even though he brought us back from the 21-year drought.
Yeah, I would say that's more Neil Huntington than Clint Hurdle.
Wow.
But like I said earlier, I mean, having only 3 winning seasons the past 9 seasons, that's not something you want.
It's dreadful. Well, I mean, it's definitely up in the air, and hopefully we can get a started season soon so we can see if these changes are in effect. And only time will tell as the MLB comes together and is put into motion. So now, as I've asked each of our previous specialists, who do you see as a front runner then to establish a deep playoff berth in the season? Is it finally the Dodgers' year on a shortened season?
I think the Dodgers. I think everybody is looking at the Dodgers now and is probably looking at them as being
Arrested Clayton, a half-used Clayton
the next
Kershaw.
team to win the World Series. But I would either say probably the Dodgers or the Yankees have the best chance at winning the World Series.
Well, you hear it here,
If
folks.
this season,
Finally gets back into play.
We'll
It will all certainly be exciting if, and once it pans out, and that's for sure. And once again, we have one of our specialists here, Isaiah Griffith, here on the set with us, and giving us an exceptional take here on how the MLB will pan together. Well, everybody, that was about all we have time for on our first inaugural episode of The Point. I want to extend a great thank you to our 3 specialists, Brett, Nate, and Isaiah, for coming on with us today. As always, make sure to hop on our Instagram and Twitter at @thepoint_412 to keep up with everything going on with sports all throughout the week. I'm Riley Taylor, and thanks for tuning in.